Once upon a time, in a mansion surrounded by the quiet ache of too much money and too little love, a boy stopped eating. It didn't happen all at once. It began with unfinished plates, then full ones, then the refusal to come to the table at all. And now, 3 weeks later, the trillionaire's only son sat curled in the corner of his velvet reading chair, bones more visible than they should be, lips pressed into silence, gaze fixed on something no one else could see. No one touched him. Not the nurses, not the therapists, not even the father, because the father, Mr. Whitaker, stopped touching anyone the day his wife died. He didn't cry at her funeral, didn't speak to the guests, didn't hold his son's hand. He stood like a statue at the head of her white casket, a pale grey coat buttoned up tight to his throat, eyes glazed with a grief that hardened into something unrecognizable, a fortress. Now, inside that fortress of polished floors and imported ceilings, lived a boy who hadn't spoken a word since the last rain, and who hadn't eaten since his mother's perfume faded from the hallway. Until today, someone new arrives. Not a specialist, not another carefully credentialed expert with files and formulas, but a woman named Grace. She arrives without fanfare, a second-hand suitcase in her hand, a white cloth wrapping her hair, a cardigan buttoned wrong. Her shoes don't match, and her face is neither plain nor striking. It is simply open. The butler, Mr. Wren, meets her at the door. "You're late. I came early. They sent me away," she says gently. Wren eyes her. "You're the faith-based referral?" She nods. "I'm not trained, not by school anyway." Wren doesn't know what to do with that. He simply clears his throat and steps aside. Grace walks in. She walks like she's stepping onto holy ground, slowly, not reverently but respectfully, as if the silence in the home is not something to be broken, but something to listen to. The hall is cold, not just in temperature, in atmosphere, in absence. No photos on the walls, no sound but the hum of systems, and behind every door, a closed-off world where grief has made a nest and curled inside it. They show her the room she's to clean, the halls she's to keep dust-free, the rules she's to follow. No one mentions the boy, but she feels him, like a breath held in the walls. On the second night, she hears something soft, like paper tearing. She follows the sound down the west hallway, barefoot, her fingers trailing the wall. In a corner of the small library, half lit by moonlight, she sees him, the boy, maybe 7 or 8. It's hard to tell, his limbs thin and his eyes hollow like he's been underwater too long. He doesn't notice her, or maybe he does, but doesn't care. He's scribbling something in a notebook, a red one. Her steps pause. Her presence is a question mark in the doorway. She doesn't speak. She sits down instead, on the floor, not beside him, not near enough to startle, just far enough to be noticed if he wishes. She doesn't watch him directly. Her hands open her own small book, a notebook of her own. She hums something, barely audible, just a line, a lullaby, not meant for him, meant for the air. The boy stills. His pencil stops. He doesn't look up, but he closes his book and slips out of the room like a shadow. She stays seated, eyes closed, still humming softly to herself. That's how it begins. Not with words, but with echoes. The next morning, the boy appears again. At a distance, she's in the kitchen garden, planting rosemary in an empty box someone forgot. Her scarf is tied back, sleeves rolled, hands in the dirt. He doesn't speak. He just watches her through the glass, then disappears. She says nothing to anyone. Not about the notebook, not about the boy, because she understands the rules of this house. Speak only when spoken to. Touch nothing. Don't ask. Don't linger. But she also knows another set of rules, one that doesn't come from money or trauma or grief, one that comes from love. Love doesn't demand. It waits. It watches. It whispers. So she keeps humming when she folds the towels. She writes in her notebook when she finishes her chores. She talks to the flowers in the garden. And over the next few days, the boy begins to drift nearer. He doesn't speak. He doesn't eat. But one day, as she steps away from her plate of toast to pour more tea, she returns to find a single corner bitten off. She doesn't react. She just finishes her tea. That night, she puts a small plate beside the garden bench, a warm roll with honey. She turns away, hums. When she looks back, the plate is empty. No crumbs, no note, but the next day, there is a drawing on the bench. A bird with outstretched wings. No words, just lines. Sharp, expressive, alive. She pins it to the wall inside the tiny linen room, beside the dusty broom and the box of broken bulbs, like it's the most sacred thing she owns. The boy doesn't come back that night, or the next. But 3 days later, he follows her down the hall. She doesn't turn. She leaves her door slightly open. He doesn't enter. But in the morning, there's another drawing on the windowsill. A tree, roots deep, branches empty. And something in her chest aches. Not sadness, not quite. It's a feeling she hasn't named in years. A memory of something gentle. A whisper of what faith feels like when it first returns. The next afternoon, she hums as she folds his shirt. Not a lullaby this time. A hymn. About water. And light. She doesn't finish the line. The boy does. Just one word. Soft. Barely audible. Rise. She freezes. Not from fear. From awe. Like something sacred just moved in the room. She doesn't look at him. Just presses her hand over her heart and closes her eyes. It is the first word he has spoken since his mother died. She doesn't tell anyone. Not even Mr. Whittaker. Because this moment wasn't meant for headlines, or therapy records, or reward. It was a gift. And some gifts are meant to be held in silence. Later that night, it rains, for the first time in weeks, and the boy stands barefoot under the covered veranda, watching the water fall like the sky is crying for him. Grace doesn't join him. She stands in the doorway, hands clasped. She doesn't speak. She prays, quietly, not with words, with presence, with warmth, with hope. She knows the hardest part is yet to come. The eating, the father, the resistance. But something has shifted. The silence has cracked. And in that crack, something like healing begins to grow. Not loudly, not quickly, but deeply, like a seed underground, waiting to rise. The rain lasts through the night. Not a storm, just a gentle, steady rhythm like breath. The kind of rain that settles into the bones of a place, softens the silence, and brings up the scent of things buried deep. Grace doesn't sleep. She listens, not for footsteps, not for voices, but for that shift in the house, the almost imperceptible hum of something waking up after being numb for too long. At dawn, the house is still quiet, but different. The air feels warmer, not in temperature, in presence. In the kitchen, she prepares tea, not coffee, not juice, tea that smells like memory. She adds a touch of honey and places 2 mugs on the counter, one for her, one for the space beside her. She doesn't expect anyone to take it, but she offers it anyway. She sits, waits, and then the boy comes in. His steps are quiet, but not hidden. He looks at the mug, then at her, then back at the mug. She doesn't say a word. He lifts it, sniffs, sips, and swallows. She doesn't react. She just lowers her eyes and breathes. Slow, quiet, steady. A sacred silence falls between them. Not the heavy kind, the kind that heals. He drinks the tea down to the last drop, sets the mug on the table, and walks out. It is the first thing he's swallowed in 22 days. Later that morning, Mr. Whittaker enters the hallway just as Grace is returning from the linen room. Their eyes meet for the first time. He has the look of a man who's forgotten how to speak to people, especially ones like her. She lowers her head respectfully. "Good morning, sir." He nods. Once, that's all. But it's not what she sees that makes her pause. It's what she doesn't. His suit is pressed, his tie perfect, his hands gloved as always, but his eyes, they glance at her hands. The mug in her grip. "You made tea?" he asks. She blinks. "Yes, sir." "For whom?" She doesn't answer directly, just in case someone needed it. His eyes linger. Suspicion or curiosity, she can't tell. He moves on. She exhales. The next evening, she finds the boy in the hallway outside the locked piano room, just sitting, his notebook beside him. She walks past him, slowly, no words, then stops, retraces her steps, and sits across from him, legs crossed, back straight, hands resting in her lap. He doesn't look up, just sketches. She hums, a slow, aching tune, a lullaby without words. His hand pauses. then draws again faster this time. He shows her. It's not a picture of her. It's a picture of a woman sitting under a tree, her head tilted up, listening to the sky. She doesn't need to ask who it is. He closes the notebook and stands. Then, he does something that takes her breath away. He touches her hand. Just a moment, just a brush of fingers. Then he leaves. She sits there long after he's gone, eyes closed, heart full, because touch, in this house, is rare. Touch is trust. That night, she writes in her own notebook. He's listening. The silence is thinning. The house is starting to breathe again. She leaves the entry on the kitchen table. Doesn't realize the father will see it. But he does. At 3:12 a.m., sleepless as always, Mr. Whittaker roams the house in his silent robe, not unlike a ghost himself. He sees the notebook by accident, opens it, reads the single page. His fingers tremble. He flips through. Finds other entries. Not surveillance. Not medical notes. Just reflections. Poetry. Almost. About light on the tiles. About the sound the boy makes when he moves his pencil too fast. About the smell of rosemary in the garden. About hope. He closes it, returns it to the exact place he found it, and goes to bed for the first time in weeks. The next morning, he speaks to her, not about the notebook, but about the tea. "I used to make tea for my wife," he says stiffly, standing in the doorway. Grace is peeling oranges. She looks up. "She liked honey?" He nods. "And ginger, a lot of ginger," said it helped her breathe. Grace doesn't fill the silence. She lets it hang there, like steam rising. After a pause, he steps back into the shadows of his routine, but his voice stays in the room. That afternoon the boy eats half a roll, just half, but he holds it in his hand, chews, swallows, and then he brings the rest to Grace. He places it in her palm, and smiles, just barely, like his mouth forgot how, but remembers now. She doesn't cry. She waits until he walks away. Then she turns and breathes through the tears in her eyes. That night, it rains again, and the boy stands under it, this time barefoot and smiling. Grace brings out 2 towels. He lets her wrap him in one, and for a brief second, he leans into her, his head against her side, like he belongs there. She doesn't move. She just rests her hand lightly on his back, a gesture of presence, not control. The next day, there is a change in Mr. Whittaker. Small. He comes to breakfast, not to eat, just to sit. The boy doesn't look at him, but he doesn't leave the table either. They sit in silence. Grace makes toast. No one speaks. But something sacred lives in that stillness. A rebuilding, a remembering, a seed pushing upward, just beneath the surface. After breakfast, Mr. Whittaker speaks to Grace in the hallway. He said something. She looks at him. "The boy," he clarifies. "He said, 'Mama used to sing in the garden.'" Grace nods. She doesn't say, "I know." She simply says, "She left a lot behind." He looks at her. "Like what?" Grace doesn't answer. She places a small potted lavender in his hand. "From the garden." No words, just scent, memory, presence. He nods once, barely, and leaves. That night, in her room, Grace finds a red notebook under her door. It's not hers, it's his, the boy's. She opens it and gasps. Inside are sketches of her, in the garden, at the table, humming, sketches of the boy, 2 smiling, laughing, eating toast, and one final page, a picture of a family, 3 figures, a man, a woman, a child, no labels, just hands held, and above them, a single word scribbled in a child's scrawl, almost. She closes the book slowly. Her heart feels like it's breaking, or blooming. She doesn't know which. Maybe both. She whispers to herself, "We're getting there." And for the first time since she entered this house, she sings a lullaby, soft, steady, for no one to hear, and for everyone to feel. The next morning begins with stillness. Not the heavy kind. A quiet so gentle it feels like the house is listening. Grace rises before the sun, as always. She folds her blanket with care, washes her face in cold water, and ties her scarf back with practiced hands. But something is different in the way she moves. Last night changed her. The red notebook sits on her table like an altar. She hasn't returned it yet. Not because she's keeping it, but because she understands. Sometimes, a gift needs to sit in your chest a little longer before you can let it go. She carries the book down the hallway. Not hidden, not displayed, and leaves it by the piano room door. The same room that's been locked since the mother passed. She doesn't knock, doesn't linger, just walks away. An hour later, she hears soft footsteps on the wood, then the sound of the notebook sliding gently across the floor. No voice, no question, just presence. At breakfast, Mr. Whittaker appears again, still not eating, but present. He wears a charcoal suit today, simpler than usual, less armor. The boy sits across from him. Grace pours tea for both, hands steady. She feels the shift in the room, not in words, but in weight. The kind of weight that comes from grief, softening its grip. Halfway through the meal, the boy places a piece of apple on his father's plate, a small gesture. Mr. Whittaker looks down at it, then up at his son. Their eyes meet. Something unspoken passes between them, an apology, a memory, a reaching. Mr. Whittaker picks up the apple slice and eats. The boy's eyes widen, just slightly. Then he smiles. It's faint, but it's real. Grace doesn't smile. She bows her head, whispers a prayer into her tea. That afternoon, something extraordinary happens. The door to the piano room is open. Just a crack. Grace walks past it twice before noticing. The third time, she stops, pushes it open. The air inside smells like dust and memory. Light spills through the stained glass windows in faded pinks and golds, washing over the white grand piano at the center like a blessing. The cover is lifted. Grace steps inside. Slowly. She touches nothing, just walks quietly across the room and sits on the old stool tucked near the corner. She hums. The boy walks in behind her. Barefoot, he doesn't speak, but he moves to the piano and places his hands small, trembling on the keys. He presses one. It rings out like a breath, then another, and another. He doesn't play a song, not yet, but he makes sound, and in this house, that is a kind of resurrection. Mr. Whittaker finds them like that. Hours later, the boy is pressing single keys. Grace is humming something soft, eyes closed. She doesn't turn when he enters. She feels him. He doesn't speak, just listens. He looks at the piano, at the child, at the woman who, without instruction or strategy, somehow brought the house back to life. That night, he doesn't go to his study. He sits in the garden, by himself, under the stars, and stares up at the tree the boy once drew, the one with empty branches. A single blossom sits on the edge of one limb now, real, alive. He doesn't know who planted it. He doesn't need to. Some things don't require answers, only gratitude. Inside, Grace sings, soft, like a mother would, not for a crowd, not for a stage, for a boy who's asleep in the room across the hall, and for a woman who never stopped loving them, even in death. The next morning, the boy writes a new word in his red notebook, one she's never seen from him. Here, she finds it folded neatly on her nightstand. She runs her fingers across the page and closes her eyes. He is not almost anymore. He is here. The days begin to take shape. Morning tea, midday sketching, afternoon gardening, evenings by the piano. A rhythm not routine, but relationship. Grace teaches the boy how to knead dough. He flour covers his shirt, his hands, her hair. He laughs. Loud, the sound startles the house. And in the hallway, Mr. Whittaker stops walking. He closes his eyes and lets the sound hit him like sunlight. That night, Mr. Whittaker lingers in the doorway of the kitchen. Grace is washing the flour out of her scarf. The boy is asleep on the settee, a faint smear of honey still on his cheek. "May I ask you something?" Mr. Whittaker says, voice gravel soft. She turns, drying her hands. Of course. He struggles, not with the question, but with the fact that he's asking. Why? Him? Grace tilts her head. I'm not sure I understand. Why does he respond to you? No one else has ever. He trails off. She considers her answer, then walks to the table, lays her palm on the wood. Soft, still damp. He doesn't need someone to fix him, she says. He needs someone to see him. Mr. Whittaker lowers his gaze. I haven't known how, he admits. Since she passed, I stopped knowing how to be anything but absent. "You're still here," she says softly. "Physically." She nods. Sometimes presence is the beginning. He doesn't respond. But that night, he stays in the room while the boy falls asleep. Doesn't touch, doesn't speak, just sits nearby, like a man learning how to be still without disappearing. At midnight, it rains again. Grace wakes to the sound, not of water, of something else. A soft sob from down the hall. She doesn't grab a coat. She walks barefoot and finds Mr. Whittaker sitting at the piano, his head bowed, his hands clenched. In front of him, a small, crumpled photo of his wife, and beside it, the red notebook. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. He says it through tears. "I thought I lost everything." Grace kneels beside him. "You didn't lose him." His breath catches. "I don't know how to reach him. You already are." And in that moment, the silence between them is not empty. It is full of love, of loss, of trying, and of something that looks like redemption. Slow, quiet, real. As the rain falls outside the window, the boy sleeps peacefully. No nightmares, no tears, just the steady breath of a child who finally feels safe. And the house, for the first time in years, feels like a home. The next morning, the house feels lighter. Not because the sun is shining any brighter, it isn't. The clouds still linger outside the tall windows, mist clinging to the edges of the estate like breath on cold glass. But something within the walls has shifted. The silence is no longer a wall. It's a room with the door slightly open. Grace wakes before the others, not out of habit, but out of instinct. As if someone is waiting for her, she moves through the hallway without sound, bare feet on polished floors, her scarf loosely tied around her head. She's humming softly. A hymn, the one the boy finished with a single word days ago. Rise. When she enters the kitchen, she stops. The boy is already there, not sitting, standing on a small step stool beside the counter, trying to peel a banana with shaking fingers. There's flour on the floor, a cracked egg in the sink, and a teacup turned upside down like a tiny bowl. He looks up when he sees her, frozen, like he's afraid he did something wrong. She smiles, not with her mouth, with her eyes, and walks over. "Smells like breakfast is on the way," she says gently, lifting the overturned teacup and rinsing it. "I wanted to make toast," he mumbles. Grace blinks, not at the toast, at the sentence. It's the most he's spoken since she arrived. She doesn't let the moment swallow them. "Let's do it together," she says. They toast the bread, burn the first 2 slices, laugh, start over. By the time the house wakes up, there's a full plate of golden toast on the table, drizzled with honey, and a soft warmth in the air that smells like beginnings. Mr. Whittaker walks in, buttoning the cuff of his sleeve. He stops. The boy is sitting at the table, eating. Grace is wiping her hands on her apron. There's laughter in the air, thin but real. He doesn't speak, just stands there, still, overwhelmed. Grace walks over to him, places a mug of tea in his hand. "Join us," she says. He does. The boy doesn't shrink away, doesn't stop eating. They eat together. 3 people. No labels, no roles, just presence. After breakfast, Mr. Whittaker lingers. The boy tugs at his sleeve. "I want to show you something," he says. Mr. Whittaker blinks. It takes him a moment to nod. Grace watches them disappear down the hallway, the boy leading, the father following. She stays behind. Because healing doesn't always need a witness. It needs space. In the music room, the boy places his red notebook on the piano bench, opens it, flips to the last page, then closes it, and presses a key. 1 note, then another. Mr. Whittaker listens, doesn't interrupt. The boy speaks quietly, without turning. "She used to play here." "Mama." "I know," Mr. Whittaker whispers. "I remember how her hands looked when she played." He presses another key, softer this time. "She smiled when she played." Mr. Whittaker kneels beside him. "I forgot how to smile," he says. The boy turns, looks at him, and for the first time, reaches out, not to show him something, to hold his hand. Mr. Whittaker's breath shakes. He takes it. They sit there, together, in front of the piano their grief had once buried, not playing, just remembering. The rest of the day moves quietly. Grace hums as she folds sheets. The boy draws in the garden, under the tree that now blooms with 2 new flowers. Mr. Whittaker paces less, smiles more. It is subtle, but real. That evening, a knock comes at the front door. Unexpected. Mr. Wren answers. A tall woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard stands on the steps. Dr. Harding, speech specialist. Mr. Whittaker appears in the foyer. He didn't request anyone, but he knows who did. His sister, or maybe the board, or someone who still believes that healing comes with credentials and charts. Grace stands behind him, watching. Dr. Harding looks at Grace, frowns. Are you the maid? Grace nods. And you're the one he's been responding to? Yes. I'd like to observe, she says flatly. The boy is in the hallway. He sees the woman, her clipboard, her lab coat. He freezes. His body stiffens. His breath shortens. Grace steps forward. Maybe another day. Dr. Harding frowns. I was invited. Grace looks at the boy. His fingers are twitching. He's backing toward the wall. Mr. Whittaker watches, then makes a choice. He steps in front of the doctor. I appreciate your time, he says. But we won't be needing your services today. Her eyebrows shoot up. Excuse me? Mr. Whittaker places a firm hand on the door. Thank you for coming, and closes it. Just like that. Grace exhales. The boy darts into her arms. Not out of fear, out of trust. Later, she finds Mr. Whittaker in the study. He's standing by the fireplace, staring at an old photo of his wife. She wouldn't have let strangers touch him either, he says. Grace nods. She still doesn't. He looks at her. Sometimes I wonder if she sent you. Grace smiles faintly. Sometimes I wonder that too. That night, Grace tucks the boy into bed. He whispers, Can you stay until I fall asleep? She sits beside him, strokes his hair, and sings. Soft, a lullaby of light and rivers. He falls asleep with his hand curled around hers. In the hallway, Mr. Whittaker watches through the cracked door. His eyes are wet, but he doesn't wipe them. He lets them fall. And for the first time in years, he doesn't feel ashamed of his grief. He feels human. Downstairs, the house hums. Not with systems, with life, with healing, with home. And somewhere, just outside the window, the rain begins to fall again, soft and slow like a prayer finally answered. The rain continues through the night. Not heavy, not storming. Just enough to hush the world, like the sky itself is trying to lull the house back to sleep. Grace doesn't sleep much that night. She sits by her window, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, the boy's red notebook resting quietly in her lap. She doesn't open it. She doesn't need to. She remembers every page. Down the hall, the boy is sleeping peacefully. Mr. Whittaker, too, is awake, but not pacing, just standing by the garden doors, watching the mist drift over the lawn. He sees the blossoms on the tree. 3 now. He doesn't know when the third one appeared. He wonders if it bloomed for him. The next morning is still. The house feels sacred. Grace prepares breakfast quietly. Toast, sliced apples, oats soaked overnight. Mr. Whittaker joins her in the kitchen, not as a guest. As someone participating, he rolls up his sleeves, watches her mix batter. She hands him a wooden spoon without asking. He stirs. It feels foreign, humbling, strange, but not unwelcome. The boy enters, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He sees his father at the counter, sees his hands in the bowl, and he grins. You're doing it wrong, the boy says. Mr. Whittaker raises an eyebrow. Am I? Grace steps back, lets the moment unfold. The boy walks over, takes the spoon, and adjusts the movement. Like this, he says. Mr. Whittaker mimics him. They laugh. The pancakes burn. They laugh again. Grace watches them, her heart full and quiet. That afternoon, she takes the boy into the garden for their usual drawing session. But this time, he doesn't bring his notebook. He brings a seed. Can we plant it? He asks. She nods. Of course. They find a soft spot beneath the window. He presses the seed into the soil with his thumb, covers it, pats it down, then looks up. Do you think it'll grow? Grace smiles. If we keep coming back, even if we don't see it, especially then. He nods. Mr. Whittaker watches them from the balcony. His eyes are softer now, but something stirs behind them, something unspoken, something not yet healed. That evening, after the boy sleeps, he asks Grace to join him in the study. She hesitates. He notices. I won't ask anything strange, he says. Just company. She follows. They sit by the fire. A long silence. Not awkward, just honest. He clears his throat. My wife used to keep journals. Grace nods. The red ones. His eyes widen. He nods slowly. You've seen them? One, she admits. It belonged to the boy. I didn't think he remembered. He does. Not in words, in rhythm, in silence. He leans forward, elbows on his knees. She was always the bridge, between me and the world, between me and him. You haven't lost that bridge, Grace says softly. He looks at her. You are that bridge now, she adds. His eyes glisten. He blinks quickly. I don't know how to be a father. I only know how to be a provider. Then provide your presence. He laughs. Dry, not mocking, just surprised. No one's ever said it like that. It's not something we're taught, Grace says, but it's what we need. She stands, walks to the bookshelf, pulls one of the old red journals down, opens it, hands it to him. Inside, a sketch, not by the boy, by the mother, a drawing of the piano. The tree, the boy holding his father's hand. The page is dated 2 months before she passed. Below it, her handwriting, they'll find each other one day. He just needs to know he's allowed to be soft. Mr. Whitaker doesn't move, doesn't speak. His hands tremble. Grace leaves him alone. That night, she dreams of the seed. In her dream, it grows fast. Roots like light, leaves like lullabies. In the morning, she checks the soil. Still bare, she smiles anyway. Because healing always starts underground. At breakfast, the boy eats 2 whole pancakes. Without prompting, afterwards, he tugs at Grace's hand. Can I show him? He asks. Show who what? My drawings. Can I show Papa? She smiles. I think he'd like that very much. They go together to the piano room. Mr. Whitaker is already there, as if he knew. The boy spreads his notebook on the floor, each page. Carefully, Grace watches from the doorway. She doesn't step in. This is their moment. The boy narrates each page in his own way. This is when I saw her in the garden. This is when I heard the humming. This one is you, trying to stir the batter. Mr. Whitaker laughs, wipes his eye quickly. Then the boy pulls out one last drawing. One Grace hasn't seen. It's not a sketch. It's a painting. Crude, childlike, but unmistakable. A dinner table. 3 chairs, 3 plates, 3 people. A family, and on each face, a soft, unmistakable smile. This one's today, the boy says. Mr. Whitaker's voice cracks. I love it. The boy looks at him. Do you mean that? Mr. Whitaker kneels beside him. I mean it. He takes his son's hand, presses it gently. You mean everything to me. The boy leans in, whispers something into his father's ear. We don't hear it, but Mr. Whitaker begins to cry. Not quietly, not shamefully, openly. Grace steps back, closes her eyes, and breathes. The house breathes with her. Outside, the sun pierces the cloud cover for the first time in days. The garden glows. The blossoms on the tree tremble with light. And beneath the window, in the soil where they planted the seed, a single green sprout rises, small, quiet, alive. The seed sprouts, small, green, delicate. Just 2 leaves, trembling in the morning breeze. The boy sees it first. His shout of joy echoes through the hallway. Grace rushes out, her apron still dusted with flour. He's kneeling beside the little patch of soil, hands muddy, eyes wide. It's growing, he whispers, like saying it too loud might scare it back underground. Grace kneels beside him. She touches his shoulder gently. So are you, she says. He smiles up at her. Across the garden, Mr. Whitaker watches from the veranda. He smiles too, softly, briefly. And yet, something in his eyes flickers, a shadow of something old, something unspoken. Later that morning, Grace finds him in the study, staring at a photograph on the wall. His wife, holding the boy when he was just a baby, her laugh frozen in time. Grace stands in the doorway, says nothing. He speaks first. She used to sing about seeds, said things don't grow unless they're broken open first. Grace steps closer. She was right. I thought grief was the breaking, he says, but now I'm starting to think maybe the silence was. He turns to her, eyes soft, fragile. I don't know how to be joyful anymore. I'm afraid if I let myself feel it, I'll lose her again. Grace walks to the window, looks out at the garden. You don't lose the sun by opening the curtains, she says. You let it in. He closes his eyes. The next morning, something changes. The boy is waiting outside Grace's room, red notebook in hand. He opens it, flipping to a blank page. Can we write a story together? He asks. She kneels. Yes, you start. He draws a tree. Beneath it, a small boy holding a seed. Next to him, a woman with a scarf. Grace adds to the drawing. A third figure, tall, serious, standing near but not touching. The boy writes beneath it. Once, there was a boy who was sad. Grace adds, and a woman who listened. The boy continues, and a man who watched from far away. They write all morning. Their story unfolds across pages. Simple, beautiful, true. At lunch, the boy rushes to the dining room. Papa, he shouts. Mr. Whitaker turns. Will you read our story? The father hesitates, then nods. The boy lays the notebook on the table. Grace stands nearby, silent. Mr. Whitaker reads. He turns each page slowly, stops at one. A drawing of the mother, surrounded by light. The boy has written beneath it. She still lives in the garden. I feel her in the tree. Mr. Whitaker swallows hard. He doesn't speak. But when he finishes the last page, he places his hand over the notebook, then over the boy's. I'm proud of you, he whispers. The boy beams. That night, rain falls again. The soft kind, steady, cleansing. Mr. Whitaker doesn't go to his study. He walks the halls instead, pauses in front of each room, the piano room, the nursery, even the linen closet, where his wife used to fold towels while singing lullabies. He stands at Grace's door, raises a hand, knocks. Come in, she says gently. He steps inside, awkward, unsure, but present. She gestures to the second chair. He sits. I keep thinking of her voice, he says. Not her words, just the sound. Grace nods. Sometimes I think the soul remembers music even after forgetting language. He lets that sit. Then he whispers, she told me once, if anything ever happened to her, I'd need to learn how to hold him. Not just raise him, hold him. He looks down at his hands. They've only ever known work, contracts, control. I don't know how to use them for comfort. Grace gently reaches forward, takes one of his hands, turns it over, places it palm up between them. Start here. She places her own hand over his. Presence before perfection. He closes his eyes, and for the first time in years, he breathes without bracing. The next morning, they eat breakfast together again. Toast, eggs, fruit. No tension, no expectation. Just a family in progress. After the meal, Grace tells them she's going to church. A small chapel down the road. I go every week, she says. It helps me listen. The boy asks, can I come? Grace nods. Of course. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Whitaker clears his throat. I'll come too. The boy stares at him. Really? I think it's time. They go together, the three of them, in a simple car. No driver, no fanfare. They sit in the back row. The chapel is small, wooden beams, open windows, candles flickering. The choir sings, not perfectly, but with heart. The boy holds Grace's hand, and halfway through the service, Mr. Whitaker begins to cry, not loudly, just enough. A tear rolls down his cheek. Grace doesn't look at him. She simply squeezes his hand. Later, outside, the boy runs ahead, chasing birds across the wet grass. Mr. Whitaker stands beside Grace. Thank you, he says. She looks at him. For what? For staying. Her voice is soft. I was never here to leave. He nods, looks up at the sky. I think she'd be proud. Grace smiles. She is. When they return home, the boy rushes to the garden. He kneels beside the seed, gasps. 4 leaves, he shouts. Mr. Whitaker kneels beside him, places a hand on the boy's back. Let's water it together. Grace watches from the porch. The sun breaks through the clouds. Just a little, but enough. The boy laughs. The father joins. And the house, once built on silence and sorrow, begins to echo with the sound of healing. Not loud, not fast, but deeply, truly, forever. The healing has taken root, But in every story of restoration, the past always returns before the final breakthrough. In this chapter, old wounds surface, and the test of love begins. Soft, cinematic, faith-infused. Let it breathe. The days feel longer now, but in a good way. Not heavy, not stretched thin, just full. Full of sound, of rhythm, of shared meals and open windows, of laughter that no longer startles the walls, of footsteps that don't feel like echoes of grief. Mr. Whitaker spends more time in the garden now. Sometimes he just stands by the sprouting plant, watching it grow like it's teaching him something about time. The boy has started naming things, the flowers, the birds, even the piano. He calls it Mama's Heart. Grace doesn't ask why. She understands. One morning, while she's folding laundry, the boy runs in breathless. "I want to build something." She looks up, surprised. He's beaming. She sets the towel down. "What do you want to build?" "A house," he says, "a small one, for birds." Grace nods. "Then we'll need wood. And nails." "I want Papa to help," he says. "Ask him." So he does. And Mr. Whitaker says, yes. They build it together in the shed behind the kitchen. It's crooked, nails sticking out, paint uneven, but it's perfect. They hang it outside the boy's window. The next morning a bird visits. The boy nearly cries. He writes about it in his red notebook. The bird came. That means someone still believes in coming back, but not everything returns so gently. That afternoon, a phone rings in Mr. Whitaker's study. He hasn't heard that ringtone in years. He answers slowly. "Yes?" The voice on the other end is clipped, formal. His late wife's older brother, a man of cold logic and boardroom wisdom. "We heard about the Maid," he says, "and the boy's sudden progress." Mr. Whitaker stiffens. "He's doing well." "Yes, well, that's why we're concerned." "Concerned? There are protocols, therapists, licensed professionals, not women with notebooks." Mr. Whitaker's jaw clenches. She's helping him, more than anyone ever has. She's not trained. It's reckless. Emotional dependency like this. Mr. Whitaker hangs up, just like that. But the call lingers. That night, he's distant again, quiet, withdrawn. He doesn't eat dinner, doesn't sit with the boy for the nightly drawing. The boy notices. "Is he mad at me?" he asks Grace. She shakes her head. "No, sweetheart." "Then why won't he look at me?" "Because sometimes grown-ups forget how to be soft." The boy nods, but he doesn't draw that night. The house is quiet again, not like before, not wounded, but cautious. The next day, Mr. Whitaker calls Grace into the study. She enters slowly. He doesn't look up, just stares at the fireplace. "There are people," he begins, "who think I'm making a mistake." Grace says nothing. He finally turns to her. "I'm afraid." She nods. "Of what?" "Of losing him again. Of doing it wrong. Of needing you." That last part, he says it like a confession. She walks to the window, looks out at the garden. "I'm not here to replace her," she says softly. "I'm just here." He closes his eyes. She continues. "You're not failing, you're just learning. And love, real love, is risky. I don't know if I can protect him." "You don't need to. You need to be with him." He nods, but the doubt is still there. Later, he cancels their outing to the chapel. The boy doesn't say anything. He just takes his red notebook to the garden. He doesn't draw. He sits, still, waiting. Grace sits beside him. No words. They wait together. The next morning, the boy is gone. Not missing, just absent. He didn't come for breakfast, didn't show up in the hallway. They find him in the old greenhouse, curled up in a corner, red notebook clutched tight to his chest. "I thought we were a family," he whispers. Grace kneels beside him. "We are." "Then why did he stop trying?" She pulls him close. "He's scared, but he loves you." "No, he doesn't," the boy cries. Grace holds him tighter. "He's learning." They stay like that for a long time. When they return to the house, Mr. Whitaker is waiting. His eyes are red, his tie loosened, his hands trembling. "I'm sorry," he tells the boy. "I was scared." The boy stares at him. "You didn't come last night." "I know." "You didn't sit with me." "I know." "I thought you didn't love me." Mr. Whitaker drops to his knees, takes the boy's hands. "I do. I love you so much it hurts, but I didn't know how to say it." The boy studies him, then reaches into his red notebook, pulls out a folded drawing, hands it to his father. It's a picture of a bridge. On one side, the boy. On the other, the father. In the middle, Grace, holding both their hands. Mr. Whitaker weeps. The boy doesn't move away. He leans in, lets himself be held. That night, they eat dinner together, then read their story. The one they've been writing. The boy reads the last line. And the bridge didn't break, because everyone decided to walk across, even if they were afraid. The house is warm again. The silence now a resting place, not a prison. Outside, the seed now has 5 leaves. Tomorrow, it might bloom. But tonight it is enough that they are here, together, becoming. The morning light spills through the tall windows, painting the floor with soft gold. There's no rush today, no urgency, just quiet movement, the kind that happens when a house has finally remembered how to breathe. In the kitchen, Grace hums as she flips pancakes, the same kind the boy loves. Honey drizzled, slightly too crispy on the edges. Mr. Whitaker is already at the table, reading from the boy's red notebook. He's not reading to understand anymore. He's reading to feel. The boy enters, barefoot, hair still messy from sleep. He walks straight to his father, hugs him. Mr. Whitaker closes the notebook and hugs him back, tight, with both arms. I had a dream, the boy says. What kind of dream? Grace asks, pouring juice. I was in a boat, but it was floating on air. Were you scared? The boy shakes his head. You were both in it. We didn't fall. Mr. Whitaker chuckles. Sounds like a good dream. It felt real. It is, Grace says gently. That's what family feels like. After breakfast, the boy runs to the garden. The seed has bloomed. A small white flower. Delicate. Perfect. He lets out a gasp. Grace, Papa. It bloomed. They both come quickly, stand around it. 3 heads bowed like a prayer. It's beautiful, Mr. Whitaker whispers. The boy kneels beside it. I want to name it. Grace smiles. What will you call it? He thinks for a moment. Then writes something in the dirt with his finger. Hope. Mr. Whitaker blinks fast. Grace kneels beside the boy and places her hand over his. You just planted something that never dies. That afternoon, they walk to the chapel again. This time, the boy leads. Grace walks on one side, Mr. Whitaker on the other. No one speaks. They don't need to. Inside, the chapel is empty. Just wooden pews, dust in the sunlight, the smell of wax and wood. The boy walks to the front, sits, closes his eyes, and sings. Not perfectly, not loud, but clearly, a lullaby. The one Grace always hums. It floats up, soft and holy, like it belongs to this room. Mr. Whitaker lowers his head. Grace closes her eyes. She doesn't cry. She lets it in. When the song ends, they sit together in silence. Outside, the clouds part, and sunlight pours in. Later, as they walk home, the boy looks up. Can we keep doing this? What do you mean? Mr. Whitaker asks. This, all of this, together. Mr. Whitaker kneels down, meets his eyes. We're not going back to the way things were, he says. We're going forward, as a family. The boy smiles, and for the first time in the entire story, he says it. Mama would be happy. They all stop. Let the words rest in the air. Grace takes his hand. She's not gone, she says softly. She's in the garden, in the music, in your smile, in this moment. Mr. Whitaker places a hand on Grace's shoulder. Thank you, he says. For what? For bringing us home. She smiles gently. You were always here. You just needed to remember. The final scene is quiet. Evening settles in. The garden glows with lantern light. The flower named Hope sways in the breeze. Inside, they eat together, laugh together, write another story together. In the boy's notebook, on the last page, a new drawing appears. 3 chairs, 3 plates, 3 hearts, and a caption that reads, We are not broken anymore, just growing. Fade to black. Silence. Then, a quiet lullaby, not sung, hummed, by all 3. Together, a family born not of blood, but of presence and love.